This woman tricked an entire village during the 19th century into believing she was a princess. When a mysterious young woman arrived in the small English village of Almondsbury on a night in April of 1817, the locals didn't know what to make of her. Clearly exotic, not from the area, and speaking in a foreign tongue no one could understand, the woman was clearly distraught and confused. Why was she there? And where did she come from? At first, the locals weren't sure how to handle the mysterious woman. They immediately reached out to the parish overseer, but he too was unsure how to deal with the strange lady. Therefore, he approached the Manor House in Knoll Park, which was the home to Samuel and Elizabeth Worrell. Both Americans, Samuel was a magistrate, and he had the authority to decide what to do. When the Worrells went to meet the young woman, they were taken aback by her unique beauty. Standing at around 5'2", she had dark eyes and hair. She wore a black gown with a shawl around her head, as well as a red shawl that cascaded around her shoulders. Samuel called upon his brother, who knew most Middle Eastern languages, and with the hopes he'd be able to communicate with her. However, he could not make out the dialect in which she spoke. Realizing they were making no progress, Samuel and his wife sent the woman to the village inn where she could get a hot meal and a place to sleep for the night. In the early hours of morning, Elizabeth Worrell went to visit the young woman. She found her looking over illustrated travel books and seemed most interested in one with pictures of China. After some time, the woman was able to communicate through signs and told the locals her name was Caribou. Caribou was taken to Bristol, a nearby port city, where she was questioned by city officials and the mayor. They came to the conclusion she's simply a beggar. Therefore, she was committed to St. Peter's Hospital for vagrants. However, she wouldn't stay there for long. After being incarcerated, Caribou met a Portuguese man named Manuel Enes, who said he could understand language. Finally, her true identity would be revealed. According to Enes, Caribou was from an island called Javasu in the East Indies. After being abducted by pirates, she managed to escape by diving overboard in the Bristol Channel and swimming to shore. Oh, and she was also of royal blood, making her Princess Caribou. Realizing the horrific mistake that had been made, Samuel and Elizabeth Worrell rescued her from the home for vagrants and brought her back to Almondsbury. Despite no one having heard of Javasu, they took her back to Knoll Park, where she enjoyed much better accommodations. Enjoying her new life in the village, Princess Caribou's story was further given credibility by a man who had said he'd traveled the East Indies thoroughly. While communicating with the princess via sign language, he was able to expand on her extraordinary story. According to Caribou, her father had been killed in a battle with invading pirates. After being kidnapped by a pirate captain known as Cheeming, she was able to wound 2 of the men before being sold to another pirate. They sailed for 11 weeks before Caribou had managed to escape. It almost seems too wild to be true, right? Caribou told the villagers that she spent 6 weeks wandering the byways of Gloucestershire before stumbling on Almondsbury. She also mentioned she had obtained her strange clothes from a woman she'd met along the way, trading her royal silk dress for something more common. The good people of the village were completely enamored with Caribou at this point. In order to continue the people's interest, the princess wrote down the letters of her language. She also proved to be quite handy with a bow and would spend many nights swimming the local lake completely nude. As word of the exotic princess began to spread, a local newspaper picked up the story. Dr. Wilkinson from the city of Bath wrote an article about the princess, which was published by the Bristol Journal. Featuring an illustrated portrait of the princess, the article would be the beginning of her undoing. The portrait, published in Bristol Journal, caught the eye of Mrs. Neal, a boarding house landlord who recognized Caribou as Mary Wilcox. Mary was the daughter of a cobbler who was in the village of Witheridge in Devonshire, which was only 65 miles from Almondsbury. Born in Witheridge in 1791, her father always believed something wasn't completely right with her daughter. She left her home at the age of 19 before taking a job as a nursemaid in Clapham, a suburb of London. After losing her job, she went on to spend some time living with prostitutes at the Magdalene Hospital for Penitent Prostitutes. However, she was told to leave once they discovered she wasn't a prostitute herself. From there, she would eventually get pregnant and have a baby that she ended up giving up before joining a group of traveling gypsies. At this point, Samuel and Elizabeth Worrell had become the laughingstock of England for being so gullible. As for Mary Wilcox, she decided to sail to Philadelphia to find fame and fortune as a performer. With the desire to be rid of the woman, the generous and kind Elizabeth paid for her fare to America. Good riddance, we're sure. Using her Princess Caribou persona, Mary tried to perform on the stage. Sadly, it wasn't successful, and she returned to England in 1824. She attempted once again to perform in London, but that wasn't successful either. It seemed her dreams of fame were fading fast. After all the lies and deceit, karma finally caught up with Mary Wilcox, and she spent the rest of her life selling leeches to the Bristol infirmary. Eventually, she fell in love, had a daughter, and died in 1864 during a light snowfall on Christmas Eve. Historian Brian Houghton had to say this about Mary: that Mary dared to escape her menial position and perpetrate such a complicated hoax is, I believe, nothing short of wondrous. Mary Wilcox should be an inspiration to anyone who feels held back by their position in society.